Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I am honored to have Drew Olson with me. Drew is the head women's basketball coach at Concordia University, and one of the things that I think you're going to hear in his story is how when you can take your competitiveness and create culture, it creates great success. So, Drew, thanks so much for being on today.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So to start your journey, uh, basketball was in the family genes. And so talk a little bit about, getting introduced to basketball at a young age, your dad coaching and just being around the sport.
Yeah, my dad coached at Millard South High School, and growing up, like that's all I knew. I was at the gym all the time. I'd say probably at about age 4, I knew I was going to be a basketball coach. And as I got older, I thought college coaching would probably be the best route. And it was you're right. It's kind of in the blood. My brother is also a women's basketball coach at California Baptist, and I'm still at Concordia, and it's been a great ride.
So as you're growing up, and I always think parents handle things differently. Some parents you hear of the, Tiger Woods' dads and Venus and Serena Williams' dads, where it's like, you're going to play this sport, like I am going to force you to do it. And then you got other parents that are like, if they want to play it, like great, I'll, support them along the way. And if they don't, I'll support whatever else they decide to do. What was that like in your household?
Uh, my dad was never one to push things on us,
Mhm.
um, but he allowed us to go to the gym with him, and we just loved the sport, from the beginning. But uh, yeah, he was the dad that would sit at the very top of the bleachers during my games. He would do a crossword puzzle just to not get too involved in the game. I think that was more for his own sanity and keeping him to self-distracted. But if I ever needed advice, he would give it, but he would rarely give it on command. And my brother was probably the more influential in terms of like every day pushing me, teaching me the game, but also really giving me that motivation to want more.
I love it. So, talking about your brother, you guys aren't terribly far apart in age. So, were there some competitive battles that would happen as you're growing up?
Oh yeah, so Jared's about 5.5 years older than me.
Yeah.
He was a phenomenal player at Doane University, and just he was always better than me because he was bigger than me. But it wasn't until about high school when I kind of got to a decent size where he and I could really compete. Because I probably lost about 10,000, 20,000 one-on-one games with him until that point where all of a sudden we're about the same size. And then it was really fun because I could somewhat compete. He would usually still beat me, but it was fun. And yeah, we had lots of fights. Um, and it wasn't just basketball. It was, I broke probably about 8 ping pong paddles, maybe 2 Nintendo controllers. I busted a wall, had to drywall that. So we did definitely have our moments, but I'm really thankful for what Jared did for me. Just letting a little brother tag along all the time.
Yes. Now, as you're growing up, eventually, you start to realize, hey, maybe playing college sports is going to be an opportunity for me. And so, talk a little bit about, getting ready to do that, and then also why you end up deciding to go to Hastings to start with.
Yeah, I mean, I always knew I wanted to play. I was like any other kid. I dreamt of playing for Duke. I wanted to be big time. But then your senior year in high school, you kind of realize, oh, I'm 6 foot kid that's not really that athletic, and maybe I can't make it to Duke. So started looking at other options. My brother, like I said, went to Doane. They had a coaching change, and I didn't think that coaching staff uh, really took the time to get to know me. And I knew Coach Trader from going to a lot of his summer camps, and it felt comfortable, even though my brother kind of advised me to look for some other options. And but ultimately, I did choose Hastings, and it's kind of like what your podcast says. We looking back, like I can see God's hand in having me there, but at the same time, I wasn't fit to be there. And I learned a lot. I learned a ton of X's and O's from Coach Trader, but I also learned a few things of how I don't want to coach. And every coach is a little bit different, but I could take the good and the bad from him.
I love it. So, as you have your first year at Hastings, before transferring was the norm, This idea of, hey, maybe, there is a better fit for me, kind of is in mind. So talk a little bit about, making that decision to transfer and then, ultimately how Concordia became the spot.
Yeah, so my brother just had a lot of connections, and he had me go take some visits to like Mount Marty and Bellevue and a few other places. And the weird thing was, I go and visit Concordia. Well, at that time, by that time, it was like my last visit, and Concordia's campus was the school was over, so the campus was dead. And I go and meet with Coach Schmidt for 3 hours. I didn't take a campus tour. I didn't meet with anybody. I didn't meet any players. It was just Coach Schmidt in his office for 3 hours, and we just talked.
Yeah.
And I left that office, getting in my car, thinking, "This is it. Like this is where I
Mhm.
should be." And it's just an amazing thing. You look back and you just realize, wow, like that was totally God at work. Um, and it, unlike any other visit. And I think that's what kind of separated Concordia from all the others, just how genuine Coach Schmidt was. And it was a great thing. So,
Now, your impact is felt at Concordia, and in your time being there, I mean, great team success, great individual success, and one of those, highlight moments is the national tournament. So, talk a little bit about, coming into a new environment and getting acclimated. I always think, that's a really difficult thing to do, right? Someone listening might be they maybe just transferred jobs, right? They're switching careers, and there's that element of like awkwardness of, I feel like I'm on the outside, but then if you can find a way to connect, you can quickly develop deep relationships, which you did.
yeah. So here's a side note, a side story here. Devin Smith, who is now my boss, my athletic director, he was the assistant coach at the time, but he was transitioning out to be a high school coach, but he was still around. And so to try to get myself familiar with the players and stuff, I would show up to summer open gyms. And it was probably like the third open gym. The three open gyms in a row. Devin keeps calling me my brother's name, Jared. He's like, "Hey, nice shot, Jared. Nice shot, Jared. Pass the ball, Jared. Play some defense, Jared." So finally, third time I get the courage to say, "Hey, just so you know, I think you're thinking of my brother. I'm Drew." And he says, "Oh, I know who you are. I'm going to keep calling you your brother's name until you do something with your career." It was like, oh, so it's kind of one of those moments like, oh, okay, that's how it's going to be. But um, that was him and I, our relationship that way. But uh, I think going to those summer open gyms was good just to get to know those guys a little bit better. But I also think it really helped that I had to redshirt a season.
Yeah.
So I really had like a full year to get myself feeling more comfortable and build those relationships with teammates. And it was a kind of a tough year for Coach Schmidt just because of the success that we didn't achieve. But from being a red shirt, you're kind of on the outside, trying to help the team. But I hit a moment where just my competitiveness came out, and I started talking more. I started, trying to motivate the team more, and I knew that I couldn't help on the court, but maybe I can do more stuff off the court. And I think at that moment, players started to know who I really was, and started to come to respect me a little bit more.
Now, as you had that realization as a player, and we'll get to you getting into coaching, but a question I'm just going to ask kind of within that is when you're recruiting someone, all of a sudden you get that player and you see that, right? Like, hey, you could be a great leader, but you need that vocal piece, or you need to be willing to step a little bit outside of your comfort zone. How do you encourage that? How do you bring that out of someone, at this kind of on the other side now as a coach with players that you're looking at?
Well, I think that just the simple thing of like telling them you
Yeah.
have it in you. You've got to help your teammates. And coaching females might be a little bit different than coaching males, but with females, it's, hey, your teammate needs you to do this. Like you're letting them down by not using your gifts.
Hmm.
And so helping them see what they're capable of, giving them that kind of like license to go do it. And then if I feel like they miss out on a moment, just pulling them aside and say, "Hey, that was your time to go say something." And it's not too late. Like go back in there and go talk with that individual or go talk to the team. Just helping guide them so that they do figure out. what they are capable of being as a leader.
I love that. And I think, to that point, so many people, when they look back on their journey, there was someone that was willing to speak into them before they maybe even saw it or believed it themselves, right? And I think
Absolutely.
that's what, a great leader and coach, mentor can do, right? Is, hey, I see this vision because of what I see in you from my experience, but now I need you to walk into that.
Exactly. Yep.
So back to your playing days, you guys, once again, after the redshirt year, then go on and you guys have great team success and you have great individual success. So talk a little bit about going to the national tournament, what that meant, and growing those bonds with some of the guys that you probably still have lifelong relationships with.
Yeah, it was a couple awesome experiences. So we were able to go. It would be like my sophomore year and then my senior year, going to the national tournament. It was that's the ultimate goal is to make it to the final site and kind of make a run at it. And there's a little bit of like still still some things built up of, man, we could have done a little bit more, but the experiences that team had my senior year was incredible. Thinking about the GPAC championship tournament game at our place against Dort was something that I don't think any of us will ever forget. It's probably one of the best games I've ever been a part of. Yeah, we have incredible relationships. I mean, Ryan Brado, Mark Dutzman, Dave Ford, Dan Jarrett. We still talk a bunch. I get to see Rick Dietz all the time as he comes back for homecoming, and Daryl Warner. So it's an awesome thing to continue to have those lifelong friends, and I think that's what part of going to college, but especially going to Concordia is about, because it's more than basketball. It's about those relationships that you're always going to have, and some incredible memories.
Now, over, our conversation, you've mentioned your faith a couple of times, and I think for, everyone, that's a different journey. There are folks that haven't stepped into that journey yet. There's others that are deep into their faith walk. But for you, was that something that you grew up with? Was that something that throughout your time, at Concordia, it developed? How did that kind of come about to be a prime or important part of your life?
Yeah, kind of ups and downs with it. So I grew up with it. My mom especially was somebody that really pushed us to go to church, and we went to Harvey Oaks Baptist Church in Omaha. The best was Wednesday Awanas because I could compete with athletics, some kind of like race and stuff. So that was fun. Um, but I would say that I wasn't like all in.
Yeah.
And then again, God led me to Concordia, kind of planted some more seeds, getting to live with Ryan Brado and Dave Ford of two faithful Lutheran men that kind of would have conversations with me throughout. I'd go to church with them throughout my college career, but again, I wouldn't say I was like consistent. And so then after I graduated from Concordia, I go on to grad school in Omaha, coaching at Bellevue University, and I would say it was pretty absent. I'm a believer all the time, but it wasn't like I was faithfully going to church or seeking things out. And again, I think God called me back to Concordia, and somehow I got the women's job, even though I was not qualified for it. Uh, but then when I was here, um, Pastor Baumeister, he was the chaplain at the time. He gave me a challenge. I met with him early on when I was hired, and he just said, "Do you have a church?" And I said, "Well, I don't have any church yet." And he said, "Here's what I want you to do." And he basically gave me a list of about 8 or 9 churches. And he said, "Every Sunday, go to a different church and then come report back to me and tell me what you think of it." And as I did that, I started to kind of see what connected with me. And I ended up finding Christ Lutheran in Lincoln, the Room 211 service. And that kind of like was the place that I really, really felt comfortable with. And so I started going there regularly. And then I could just tell like the Holy Spirit was really working on me to be baptized. Even though I went to a Baptist church growing
Yeah.
up, I was never baptized. I had talks, I remember in a New Testament class, hearing about it, thinking I should be baptized, but I never did.
Yeah.
And then when I come back to Concordia, I find this church, and and again, it's kind of like, this is something that's really important. I should be doing. And so finally, I was able to be baptized at 211. And so just again, it's one of those things you look back on and you just see like, wow, that was really, really important and totally a work of God.
I love it. So, as you mentioned, you had some time at Bellevue and then end up interviewing, getting the opportunity to go back to Concordia. And, kind of two things. One, what prompted you to want to look into, the women's side of coaching basketball? But then two, also going back to where you had just been. I always
Mhm.
think there's that tough element. They talk about it with people that get drafted, right? Oh, he's from Chicago, he got drafted to the Bulls. Like that's going to be added pressure because
Mhm.
you have a reputation. There's knowledge about you there. But talk a little bit about those two decisions and kind of like the fit and why you felt, hey, if the offer's there, Corey's going to be a good fit for me.
Well, the real story is that I didn't have a whole lot of other options. I did not think I was going to coach women. I was again, I'm going to go coach Duke. I'm going to go be this big D1 men's coach, and I get done with Bellevue, and I apply to hundreds of places, and I'm getting rejected by places that I'm thinking I don't even want to go there. I'm just applying, and yet you're still rejecting me.
Yeah.
Like I'm too good for this school, but yet you're rejecting me
Mm.
over and over and over again. Finally, I get this interview with College of St. Mary. And so I do the interview. I call up Coach Schmidt and I just say, hey, Coach Schmidt, I finally got an interview. Can you call them and let them know that I'd be a really good coach? And he says, well, do you want to coach women? I said, Coach, I just need a job. Like, this is the only interview I've got. And he says, okay. And I don't think he actually called because it was about 2 days later. He calls me and says, hey, I want you to come and be the women's coach here. And so he basically tells me I've got to come and interview. So I come on to Concordia's campus and I go through the full day and I meet with a whole bunch of different people. Obviously, Coach Schmidt, me with your dad. End up meeting with the HR, Connie Butler, at the end. And she's telling me all these things. I'm like, Connie, are you telling me I have the job? She's like, yeah, did nobody tell you? I'm like, no, nobody told me, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
So, so I took the job not knowing I wanted to coach women. And like I said, I was not qualified. I had never coached women. I'd never been a head coach before. But in terms of the pressures, it actually was more of the positives. Is that I have so much pride in Concordia University and what it can do for people. It made the selling as I'm recruiting like it's not selling. Like I'm just being very honest of like this is what this school is and how awesome it is. And so it made my ability to recruit so much easier because I knew Concordia. So it wasn't pressure. It was actually the kind of a gift. And so it really helped me be able to be successful in my career.
I love it. Now, for you, stepping in as a head coach, that's a whole new opportunity than being an assistant, right? It's your program. You're the one that's setting the tone. You're deciding, hey, what are our principles? What are we really focused on? Who do we want to go recruit? So talk about, finding your philosophy in that. And I know you said earlier, hey, as I played for different coaches, I started, kind of mentally making notes of I do want to do this, I don't want to do that, but talk about finding your philosophy.
Yeah, I was so blessed to have obviously my dad. Larry Ribble was my high school coach, who's a legend, and um, then I played for Coach Trader for 1 year, and like I said, I learned a ton from him in just that 1 year. Coach Schmidt's also a legend. Then I go work with Todd Eisner, who's probably the best defensive coach in the country. So I just had all of these people kind of helping me along the way and getting me to see the game in different ways. And then obviously with my brother, just the constant conversations I had with him growing up, all of those things just added to who I was going to be as a coach. Um, but then I'd say I was really, really fortunate. Um, I wasn't, I was following into big shoes in terms of Micah Parker and Todd Voss and the success that they had, but it was also like allowing me to kind of use their success to keep the success going. Um, I, I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I hired Amy Harms to be my assistant, who was a player, and she and I went to school at the same time. But she was able to kind of like keep the culture, keep the traditions of Concordia women's basketball going, and then just adding some of my ideas of how we're going to play. And between the two of us, it just kind of really helped us mesh together of what Concordia women's basketball should be moving forward. And I just think that again, I was really fortunate to have all of those things kind of align as I was growing up and getting the position.
Now, you mentioned it, you stepped into a successful program that by no means guarantees future success, right? We live in Nebraska. We can say the Cornhuskers, are a prime example of this. You can have a great tradition, but it doesn't mean that the next level is going to keep it. Oftentimes, it can actually mean the opposite, right? There's almost like a regression before there's progression. So for you, as you're looking at that, and you say, all right, Amy's been a part of the program and she has certain elements that she knows will be beneficial. But yet I'm I'm now, the head coach of it. How do you kind of balance that as a head coach of delegation, right? Hey, these are things that I really want to have, a strong hand or say in, and then here are other things that I think you might be better equipped to, have a voice on than what I could even provide to the group.
Yeah, and I think that's what made Amy so special is that she allowed me to just be myself and to just go. She was the ultimate assistant of loyalty, of suggest and support, and then any time where maybe I would like step out of the box of what she felt like the culture should be, she had no problems reining me in and saying, well, actually, this is kind of how we did it before. I think we should keep doing it this way. She just has that courageous personality that um, it's disciplined, it's holding true to her values, and because of that, like again, we were able to work really, really well together. That she allowed me the freedom to just go, but at the same time, she had no problem kind of reining me back in when maybe I'd steer a little too far away from who we should be. And so yeah, there's definitely some good moments. Remember in those first 2 years, but it was something that really really helped us bond together as a coaching staff.
Now, did you just finish year 18?
Year 19.
You're 19, and
Year
you've
19.
been to the national tournament 16 or 17 of the 19?
16, yeah.
16 of the
Yeah.
19 years. So talk about a culture of excellence, right? I mean, here we are where you mentioned earlier, hey, it's the goal is to, make the national tournament for a lot of people. For you, it's almost the standard, right? Or that at least that's what it's been throughout your career. And I think when you have that as a standard and people have experienced it, you then next year, right, as you're reloading and bringing in new people, it's just becoming a part of the culture. Like, here's how we act. Now,
Hmm.
my question for you is this: someone listening right now is running a team, they're running a company, and we're going to speak to two different parties. One is the culture is there, the standard is there. How do you keep that going? The second is we would love to be at that standard, but right now we're not there yet, right? We're the 500 team that's just hoping we could make the tournament. We don't have a tradition of continued excellence. How do we get there? So talk a little bit about that. How do you keep going? And then for someone that's maybe not at that point yet, how do they encourage their team to get to that spot?
I think the answer is kind of the same for both groups is that you as the head coach or boss or whatever, like you are the one that sets the tone, sets the expectation. And I think that's something that I've been able to do is to set the bar, set the standard at a certain mark. And if you're ever deviating, if you're not fulfilling those expectations, to be held accountable to them, to be able to have conversations with people that are sometimes uncomfortable because you're telling them, hey, you're not getting the job done. But you can do it in a way that's like building them up and showing them where they are capable of going. And you just every year you've got to continue to reset. These are our expectations, and continue to push your players to that level. And again, if they are not doing the right things to meet those standards, then you gotta call them out. And um, again, I think that you can do it in a really positive way, just as long as you know how to coach each player. Um, again, I've been really fortunate to have some players that do a great job of kind of like hearing the standard, but then also passing it down. Like I can call out a Philly Lammers in a really, really harsh way in front of everybody, which then sets the tone for everybody of like, oh, if you can say that to her, then yeah, like we've all got to be doing it. And then there's other players that I know, hey, they can't handle that, but I can pull them aside and have one-on-one conversations that's going to help that individual make sure that they're succeeding and they're fulfilling their capabilities.
I love that. Now, a second part is oftentimes in your teams, you've had a senior that is, the top dog, and then someone in the wing that is, the Scottie Pippen of the Michael Jordan, right? And I think that can be a really difficult dynamic in some regards, right? Because you have two really talented players, and if an ego happens to get in the way, that can cause friction amongst the team. At the same token, I mean, what a great opportunity, right? I mean, Michael Jordan isn't Michael Jordan without Scottie Pippen, my personal opinion, right? And that person maybe isn't getting all of the praise, right? Or they're not getting all the headlines, but hey, we still know how valuable you are to this team. So talk about having two, and oftentimes more than two, right? But specifically, a couple different high performers and making sure that it stays about the team instead of any one of the persons, getting more of the, praise and losing sight of what the ultimate goal is.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of an interesting thing that I've learned coaching women is most of the time that alpha dog um, doesn't doesn't feel like that, and you almost have to like push them into that role
Yeah.
and get them to accept it and realize that what you're doing, and I would refer to it more as like having to go score a lot of points. What you're doing is actually what the team needs.
Yep.
Don't feel bad about it. Whitney Stichka was a phenomenal player. I'll never forget. She had like 18, 19 points and a half. And we come into the locker room and she's just like huddled in a corner, just like packed up in a ball because she's just so nervous that she was a ball hog. And I'm like, Whitney, look at your teammates. None of them think this way. We need you to do this. For
Yeah.
our team to be as good as we can be, we need you to do this. Um, and yeah, we've had a lot of players that have been able to kind of fulfill that role. And then yes, you got to have kind of like the sidekick. You know, we got the alpha dog and the sidekick, and the sidekick is somebody that is probably just as valuable because the main player is not always going to have it. You know, there's going to be a few off games throughout the season, and having that sidekick be able to kind of carry the team for a little bit. You know, they don't have to carry it the whole season, but in those moments, they're able to step up and rise the occasion. Um, and I think in terms of the credit, you know, that's the job of the coach. Like, especially now, we have Jake Knobel doing an awesome job of promoting our team, and he's usually going to highlight the best players. So I don't feel like I have to encourage and or compliment our best player. Like they're getting that love a lot. So as the leader, like I'm gonna praise and encourage the other players and make the team realize like how valuable the Mac Hellmans are, the Riley Sibbles that step up into huge ways that the general fan probably doesn't realize. But for our team, like we don't win that game if they don't do what they do,
Yeah.
and telling the team this just so that everybody understands the recognition is across the board. And obviously, the Alpha Dog is going to get most of the attention, but we need to make sure that we praise the others as well.
I love it. Now, additionally, you made a comment. You said, it's the importance of being able to coach each individual player the way they need to be coached. And I haven't spent time with certain coaches, but I always think of like a Nick Saban, a Bob Knight. It,
Hmm.
it kind of seems like they had their way, and then they recruited people that
Hmm.
they thought just fit my system, right? Like, hey, I'm going to coach this way, and if you don't fit into this, then probably don't come play for me. And if you fit into this, well, I'll probably get the most out of you, right? I'll be able to squeeze everything out of you.
Right.
And so I think now being on, your side as a coach, I'd be interested to hear, when you're recruiting someone, hey, here is my style, right? Like this is how I coach. I maybe I don't know that this player, although they're a great player, would be a good fit for our system, right? And having that, sifting and sorting as you're recruiting, because I think so frequently that can happen, right? A great talent winds up with, the wrong match as a coach, or
Hmm.
the coach in the wrong environment doesn't click with a player, and all of a sudden it's a recipe for disaster. So talk about that as you're, pursuing different players to recruit, but also having the ability to adjust your style based on what they need.
Yeah, again, I've learned from a lot of different coaches, and I just felt like, why should I be the coach that's so just one-sided
Yeah.
and only one type of player is going to fit me? Because if I do that, then I'm really cutting off a whole group of players that I would miss out on. And so why can't I try to be a coach for all of them in different ways? And I I like the idea of me being able to pull players out of some shell to help them realize what they're able to do. And so if that means that I've got to coach this player a little bit differently than this player, that's fine. Now, again, it still goes back to like, can you hold the standard? You
Yeah.
know, I'm not going to waver from, coddling, babying this player. They still have to meet the standard. It's just maybe I'm going to communicate with them differently. I'm going to communicate them with a little bit more loving tone. But this player over here, like, no, they actually need the cattle prod
Yeah.
and the whip, and all of a sudden now they're at their best.
Yeah.
Can I do both? I feel like I can do both, just to be able to help both of those types of players. So when I'm recruiting, it's not necessarily um, trying to find the right fit in terms of personality. It's more about, do they fit our values? Do they fit our culture? And obviously the state, are they talented? Are they going to fit
Yeah.
our playing style? But what I was thinking about, I feel like if I kind of lost my train of thought there, but I was thinking about the personality. Like not every player is going to have the same personality, and that's good for your team.
Yeah.
I want to recruit players that do have this like little bit of edginess to them.
Yeah.
And then it's okay to have some players that don't have the edginess, because if they're all edgy, then we might have some problems.
Right.
But you do want a couple players like this, and you do want to have a couple players like this, and they all mesh together better.
One Dennis Rodman works. 12 Dennis Rodmans doesn't work.
Exactly. And exactly, like Dennis Rodman was a key piece. Like,
Yes.
he was somebody that really provided something for their team. And yeah, you can't have a full team of them, but having one or two is awesome.
Yes. Now, as you are also a husband and a father, do you try and use that kind of principle as you raise kids as well? I think that's something that's so interesting, right? Is parenting styles, and each child
Mhm.
is a bit different. They're similar in some regards, right? Because of the gene pool, but they're different because they have different interests and likes and things that, make them tick. But how do you kind of see that same parallel as a parent as you do in your coaching?
Oh, for sure. Like I definitely have, I've gotten better as a coach because I'm a parent,
Yeah.
and I think I'm a better parent because I've coached for a long time. And
Yeah.
I would agree. Like we were blessed to have 5 kids, and they're all very different. I'm gonna parent them equally and to that standard, but at the same time, like I know that I've got to I got to talk to Jacoby a little bit differently than I can talk to Quentin,
Yeah.
and that's okay. Like they're different people, and I want to make sure that they respond the same way, but maybe I got to talk to them a little bit differently so that that result happens.
I love it. Now, in your coaching career, as we mentioned, hey, been to the national tournament 16 times. In 2019, I think it was, you got the national championship. So talk about that season and, the just elation of that mountaintop moment. I think so frequently you think it's going to be long lasting and it's exciting, right? I mean, still this day, I'm sure it brings a bunch of joy, but the reality also of the situation is 24 hours later, the next season kind of starts. And,
Right.
hey, as long as I've got the future in mind, like I need to start also prepping pretty quickly thereafter for the next thing. So talk about that season, the joy of winning it, and also then that backside, hey, life goes on after it. And, to make sure that we meet our standard, I need to start prepping for the next year.
Yeah. Obviously it was awesome. To get to the very top of the mountain is the ultimate goal. And it was a long time coming. We had just been knocking on the door for so long. We had a great run in 2012, and I really feel like that's probably the best team. Like they were so good. 2015, we lost in the championship. 2017, we're in the Final Four. 2018, we're in the championship again, and we lose to Dakota Wesleyan, who we had already beaten 3 times that year. And that was just an absolute gut punch. They were a great team, and they outplayed us that day. Um, and so from that point on, from that loss in 2018, you could just tell how driven the team was. We were able to pick up Grace Berry out of she went to Nebraska Kearney, and she was a huge lift. And but the team just as a whole, like the theme was focus and finish, and their focus throughout the year was incredible. They're just so driven to get the job done and to finish the job. And when we finally did it, beating Southeastern in the championship game, you're right. It's a moment that you'll never forget. It was elation. It was a lot of it was more relief.
Yeah.
To be honest, we had this expectation for so long, and finally to have it done, it was just like, oh, finally. Um, but the shared moments with the confetti, um, you know, so anytime you watch March Madness, you watch the finals like we just watched UConn and South Carolina, I'll get texts from like Grace Berry texts me after that game like, "Hey coach, I'm watching the game. I see the confetti. Like I just want to say thank you."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Thank you, thank me, like thank you." So that memory is always there with us, and it's something that nobody can take away from us. But you're right. Like once the game was done and we had that joy, I mean, pure joy. The next day, it's kind of like, well, now what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Now we're back on school vans riding back to Seward, and Randy Bach, our athletic trainer, reminds me, "Hey, remember you've got to teach bowling class tomorrow." I'm like, "That's right. Thank you." It's right back to normal life, and it does, hopefully it doesn't change you because it shouldn't. You're still the same person regardless of if you would have won or lost that game. And thankfully we did win it, but um, it's definitely something that's very humbling because you realize you work so hard for it, but at the end of the day, like you're still the same person, and you still got to go back to work the next day.
Now, you mentioned the tagline focus and finish. And my understanding is each year you have some, either word or phrase that you focus on as a team. But do you also have, I think it's common in the coaching world or business world to have acronyms of, hey, these are our values. This is
Yeah.
what we, have. What does that look like for you? Or how do you kind of, have a standing mantra that the team follows?
Yeah, so our values are committed, humility, resilient, integrity, selfless, and trust. It spells out Christ. It's an acronym of Christ. But really, like those 6 values are what we want our players to embody every single day, and it helps us stay in line with who we want to be. There's decisions that we're going to make every day. Success is a choice, and every choice that you make leads you to one path or the other. And so you want to make sure that is that choice following in line with those values? Am I being selfless here, or am I thinking too much of myself? Am I actually committed to, God, family, school, basketball, or am I placing other things above some of those things and switching the order around? So it allows us to again stay in line. Yeah, it's a nice acronym. Yes.
I love that. Now, as you've had success, there is no doubt in my mind that you've had opportunities to entertain additional coaching positions. It's probably not like year one where you're just begging for any any coaching job. Now it's probably the complete opposite, where hey, there's a lot of opportunities that I could step into. I've proven myself. I've cut my teeth. I've showed that I could win at different levels and for an extended period of time. And yet, there's something that has kept you at Concordia instead of like your predecessors, Todd Voss, Micah Parker had moved on to, other schools and different levels of coaching, you've been committed to stay here up to this point. So talk a little bit about that and what keeps you at Concordia instead of venturing out to new opportunities.
Yeah, I've had a couple opportunities and a couple of really hard life decisions, right?
Yeah.
Because just taking a job, there's so much more to it. It's the moving, it's the different challenges. But to me, like ultimately, the reason why I've continued to stay at Concordia is first the values that Concordia has, the fact that I can help impact players grow in their faith. Um, I think is really different and unique. I'm sure I can do that at other places,
Yeah.
but it's not as prevalent as it is at Concordia because it's not just me, it's so many other people with the professors, other coaches. Just I say this all the time, like the Holy Spirit is alive and really, really working well at Concordia. So that's probably the first thing. And then second would just be my family. We're deeply rooted. So my sister is now at Concordia working in the advancement office. My wife's parents have moved into Seward, and my father-in-law is the visitation pastor at St. John. I still have my dad and Aunt Karen live in Lincoln. So we have so many family close by, and and now with having five kids, it's hard to move kids as they're in school and they're building friendships, but really like the people at St. John, the school that they get to go to, it's just an awesome place. And we know that our kids are being taught and being taught the gospel. And Seward's a great place to raise a family. And so why would we move and change things like that? Especially with the support that I've been given at Concordia to continue to be a successful basketball coach.
Love it. Now, as you mentioned family, before we wrap up, we would be remiss if we didn't mention your wife. I mean, every coach's wife is a absolute saint, and I believe get sainted
Yes.
when they at the end of life. But also, taking care of five kiddos and just the time commitment that it is. I mean, during the season, but I think that's always the misconception as well as, oh, well, once season ends, then it frees up. It's like, well, no, then I get really in
Right.
recruiting in the postseason and workouts so we can do this again. So talk a little bit about that for you guys and just, your relationship and how you balance everything in regards to, during certain time frames, there's a lot less amount of time that can be devoted to the family dynamic because, hey, I'm taking off at 2 p.m. to get to, my 6 p.m. game. And I'm not going to get home until 11:30 at night. And tomorrow I'm going to be back in the office at 9 a.m. So talk about that and, just how you guys have continued to work on that in your marriage.
Yeah, I mean it is a work in progress because this job is not typical.
Yeah.
It's just so random. There's a lot of inconsistent hours, and so we've kind of learned to like take advantage of the good hours. And obviously we just kind of got to grind through and fight through the bad times, the bad hours. And but Malia is amazing. I'm very, very lucky. She does an awesome job of being just the best mom in the world and putting up with my insanity during the season. But yeah, there's definitely moments where um, it's like, hey, I'm going to be really, really gone for like the next 3 or 4 days, or I'm working a lot of hours thinking like summer camps and recruiting times, and maybe it's a really long road trip. Those are the moments that I feel really bad because, I know that I'm not there. Thankfully, we do have family around, but it's still not this like it's not an ideal situation for Mali, but it's those other moments can I get home for lunch every single day to eat with the twins and Malie and help Malie out in those moments. If there is some time where maybe I can take a few extra hours off of Friday to be at home and help out, I'm definitely going to do that. And again, that's why I'm really thankful that I work at Concordia because they allow us to do those things and they understand that family is a priority.
I love it. Well, Drew, I'm glad you listened to 4-year-old Drew and you went into coaching, and so many other people are glad you did too. So, thanks so much for sharing your journey, and can't wait to do this again in 3 or 4 years when you have the second national championship under the belt. You heard it here first, and we'll be highlighting that journey.
Sounds good. I plan on it.